Welcome to Talk to Brazil with Tom Reaoch, the business connector to business in Brazil. Welcome to Talk to Brazil, the business connection to the world. It's the world's first English language internet radio program about business in Brazil, and now in podcast format. A professional business network is made up of people we meet every day. Our network grows and is sustained by maintaining contact with those connections. I'm Tom Reaoch, an American in Brazil for many years, and known as the King of Networking. I'm a business connector, speaker, and author on networking. I'm talking from the city of Campinas, the state of Sâo Paulo, Brazil, so when you talk to Tom, you talk to Brazil and the world. Today's guest is Alex Foessel. He's the lead architect for automation to Autonomy in John Deere, and he's talking with us from Moline, Illinois, in the United States. Previously in Brazil, he formed and directed the Technology Innovation Center and led customer support for Latin America. Earlier based in Germany, he oversaw the market launch of the consumer autonomous mower called Tango in Europe. Other experiences include roles in enterprise advanced marketing and advanced technology development. Alex holds a PhD in robotics from Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh and an electrical engineering degree from the Catholic University in Chile. Alex is passionate about inclusion and diversity of thought in organizations, and is also a rancher, raising Angus cattle in the Chilean Patagonia, and a proud John Deere customer. Alex and I are members of the Future Advisory Board, which meets at the ASIC, which is the Commercial and Industrial Association of Campinas here in Brazil, and also a member of the AmCham Brazil Campinas, the American Chamber of Commerce. So with that, Alex, hello and welcome to Talk to Brazil.
Hey, good morning, Tom. Thank you for hosting me.
And thank you for having us on Saturday morning from your home, actually, huh?
Happy to do this. I have a lot of high regard for Brazil, and to me, it's really a privilege to be able to stay connected. So thank you.
And that's part of our objective is to stay connected. And as you know, and we've been together for many years in the Future Advisory Board. You have now, as I say, you are a member because you're still a virtual member. You're in the United States, but you follow our group. You follow the information on our WhatsApp postings, and you're still active, even though you're not here amongst us, right?
And I would say that is one of the benefits that technology is bringing to us. Now we can stay connected, even though we live far away. And I think that these connections really are very important to this topic of inclusion and diversity of thought, in the sense that we can keep our brains exposed and interacting with a broad diversity of people.
Right. And you, obviously, you're from Chile. You've been here for many years in Brazil. You've lived and worked in Germany. Now you're in the States. But what I'd like you to share with our audience today is what is your feeling right now of what's the perception of Brazil from those outside of Brazil? What have you seen or heard?
Right, Tom. So maybe I'm going to give you a couple of perspectives. The first one is from the point of view of a global company that has business in Brazil, but is headquartered in the U.S. Brazil, as part of the Latin American market in the aspects of agriculture and construction, presents a tremendous opportunity. Mm-hmm. And it's an opportunity that is important for three reasons. In the case of ag, we have one of the most productive areas for different types of agricultural products in the world. And we have seen, for example, recently that some of the tariffs that the U.S. has imposed on China had challenged the commerce and the exports from the U.S., and Brazil has reacted, picking up the pace, increasing the planted land, and making up for some of the lower levels of commerce from the U.S., export from the U.S. So that that is one of the basics of the business from the point of view of a global company. But in addition to that, the adoption of technology in Brazil by our customers is significantly faster in many cases than what you would see in other markets, Europe or the US. And I think that is because the mentality of Brazilians, whether from a business perspective or from an innovation perspective, is one that is eager to catch up, is eager to improve their business. And that shows in their technology adoption. And finally, a third perspective that perhaps is more human is that Brazilians are not shy to try something new. In Brazil, and without wanting to be critical of any of my very good friends in Europe or the US, in Brazil, you are going to have teams that when in front of an innovation challenge, they will say, yep, let's go do it. Let's give it a try.
Right.
Whereas in other cultures, perhaps a bit more conservative, you're going to hear a long list of reasons of why that is not going to work.
And my perspective, I agree with you. Part of what I see happening here in Brazil, and that's not only in the agricultural sector, which you're part of, but other areas. Many companies obviously are family run or family owned. And what we see now are the newer generations, the younger persons who are either still in the university or recently out or not even in. And they seem to adopt technology in all of its forms faster and sometimes even better than their parents had. So I feel that's a driver to the technology in Brazil.
Fully agree, Tom. But I will have to also acknowledge that the technology adoption, even in let's call more mature generations, is distinctly faster in Brazil. But let's go to your comment related to the younger generation. When the younger generation is used to interacting with mobile devices, has an expectation of things being replicated everywhere, in instantaneous access to information and even insights, then they expect the same for their business. So you are correct that especially in agriculture, that is one of those industries that are very traditional, this change of generation just causes a step function change in terms of the technology adoption.
Right. Now, one of the things that really amazed me recently, the drones they started out basically here in Brazil as a toy. And very quickly people started buying drones and started using them in different forms and videos and pictures of everything. And more recently, you have startup companies using drones in agriculture, mapping out the fields, right? And you can have exact, precise view of 1 square meter of land, where previously no one even thought that was possible.
That is correct, and that is going to benefit significantly the increases of production, agricultural production. See, that is one thing that is happening in globally, I would say, but certainly very intensively in the U.S. and in North America and also in South America, which is the digitalization of agriculture, where the data is becoming the fuel. It used to be the fuel which just moved machines, right? But the fuel of machines now is data that, when analyzed, can drive our machines to be much more efficient, but also much more effective in driving for higher yields. Right.
Well, that's part of the secret, I think, to Brazil's success is the yield. And I mentioned AmCham Campinas, and actually it's a coincidence. Yesterday I was at an event here in the city of Indaiatuba, which is close to Campinas, and AmCham sponsored a leadership event together with golfing. And one of the persons making a presentation was your president here, Paulo Herman of John Deere. And his presentation was on leadership. And one of the things that he mentioned was the fact that in Brazil, I guess it's the only country in the world where you can have 3 harvests within a year. So when you're talking about yield, you can have a a square meter of land, but here you can produce 3 times a year, where in other places of the world that's not possible.
That is absolutely right. And first of all, Paulo was my boss while I was in Brazil, and nothing wrong with my current boss, who I like very much so. But Paulo is very, very exciting as a leader in how he not only presents the benefits of Brazil, but also strengthens the networking of those who have been there in a similar way to the Future Advisory Board, just making sure that we have a very tight connection in networks within the company. And I think that is really important, because the story of Brazil being such a strong producer in the ag world needs to be told, so the newer technologies consider more sophisticated production systems where you can get these 3 crops a year.
Well, farmers here in Brazil, they learn from each other rather quickly.
Yep. And they also have their own networks. And going back a little bit to this idea of technology that connects us, these networks are really, really powerful, in the sense that, for example, a couple of years ago, I had an opportunity to join a group of customers and dealers who went to an important ag show in Germany. And as we together visited this show, we established a WhatsApp network group, similar to the one we have with the Future Advisory Board.
Right.
And up until today, that is a very diverse group that is constantly providing information, ideas, challenges, insights. And I think that is something that it just strengthens the interaction and the collaboration along the value chain of agriculture.
Well, at one side, you're correct. You don't have to be anywhere to be in touch, because technology helps us. But on the other side of that same coin, sometimes it's good to be somewhere where you're closer to that technology. And now you're in Moline, Illinois, and I mentioned, we were talking about the Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh. And many people in the world don't realize how important Carnegie Mellon and Pittsburgh is to robotics and to technology.
Glad you mentioned that up, because that is another aspect that you and I share in our past, is having a common city where you grew up and I lived for a few years. I have been visiting Pittsburgh recently, and that has become the hotspot of companies, Argo AI, Uber, and others, making investments towards autonomous cars. And undoubtedly, the concentration of talent is something that is really, really important, because it just becomes a virtuous cycle of people wanting to be part of this.
Right.
Better city infrastructure in all aspects of human life and happiness. And you see that people are just getting together, participating, engaging, and the interaction and the feeding of new ideas and approaches is just phenomenal.
Right.
And maybe I'm going to take advantage of your comment and the use of Pittsburgh as an example. Of course, we could go to Silicon Valley as well, right? But let's use Pittsburgh, since you and I are more familiar with it. And what I think is that the combination of a university and government institutions and private money and companies that come in, and the availability of talent has created that as a very interesting model of innovation. And I wonder to what extent in Brazil there are already some areas that are developing like that. I'm thinking of perhaps Florianopolis is one potential area in Sâo Paulo, but where you are in Campinas.
Campinas too, yes.
It's an ecosystem that in my mind has all of the key ingredients to become this place where people want to go, because there are exciting jobs, where there's a sentiment of excitement and optimism, and where business is happening.
No, and the advantage of literally rubbing elbows together with like-minded people. I think that's of essence. Last week I interviewed Marcelo Carvalho. He headed the AgTech Garage in Piracicaba, which is close here. And really that's one of the drivers, placing agricultural-minded startups and innovative persons together in a big garage and helping each other think.
So AgTech Garage, in full disclosure, and John Deere, we have worked together already for a number of years, and they have been instrumental in helping us go and navigate through this proliferation of startups, accelerators, and a number of other members of what I would call the entrepreneurship ecosystem, the innovation ecosystem. So I'm very glad that you had a chance to interview him, and just made me reflect on a point that I think is important to your original question. So how is Brazil seen from afar?
Right.
And let me give you a perspective from Chile. Chile is a much smaller country, is fairly high in the ranking of innovative countries, yet it is a small one. And what I have seen, and this is a manifests also in the networks of Chilean executives of Chilean companies living in the Sâo Paulo state, in a network of maybe 100 Chileans who get together once in a while. You can see that Chile is just too small for the Chilean innovators. And where do they go? They will go to where they can reach scale in the business, and that's Brazil. And I guess that is a perspective that I think is important for Brazilians to understand. Brazilians live in Brazil where the scale is possible.
Right.
So I'm just encouraging the entrepreneurs and the innovators to just establish and embed themselves into ecosystems such as, for example, Campinas, Unicampi, Isalki, and look out for opportunities to integrate with larger companies that have the reach to customers through very strong dealer networks.
Right.
And I think that the opportunities are boundless.
Now, when you look at Latin America, when you look at Brazil, most of the distributors, they're smaller. They tend to be smaller companies, but their penetration throughout the country and throughout the continent is fantastic because they literally rub elbows with the people in their locale, wherever that is.
That is exactly right, Tom. In other words, our dealers, and sometimes, and I have this experience, right? While I was in Brazil, startups would approach John Deere, suggesting that by partnering with John Deere, they would have the opportunity to scale. And that could be true in some cases. But much more important is the dealer network, because the dealer has direct access to the customer.
Right.
And the customer is what's going to drive the growth of a startup. So my message was, it's great that we're talking, but let me introduce you to the main dealers we have, because they are going to be your best partner.
Right. Now, and what happens in Porto Alegre or Tocantins or Acre, Rondônia, you can only find that quickly amongst people who live there and work there.
Yep. And also that gives you, if you have, for example, a digitally based solution to quickly iterate and converge to something that will really give value to the customers.
Well, let me get back to the university. You're talking about Pittsburgh and Carnegie Mellon. How do they look at Brazil? Do you have a feeling of that?
My answer related to that is that right now, most people in the companies that are innovative around automation and autonomy are single-minded. They have a single focus, which is deliver fleets of autonomous vehicles in the key markets.
Right.
I suspect that Brazil, from that point of view, is a second wave, not the first wave, but certainly is going to reach. Now, for other companies like ourselves working with our partners in Pittsburgh, Brazil is, of course, top of mind in the sense that we believe that the Americas adopt technology in a fairly consistent way in terms of the timing of it.
Right.
So myself, as well as others who have returned from Brazil to the U.S., feel that we are really ambassadors of Brazil and Latin America in front of the decisions being made to develop new levels of technology that are going to make our customers even more productive and more profitable. And Brazil is top of mind in that pursuit.
And that's the secret. This is not no secret, but that's success, right?
Yep, exactly right.
Well, very good, Alex. I want to thank you again. We're coming to the end of our time. Did you get back to Chile often or not?
Yes. Maybe every month or every other month. Coming up, there's an important ag fair for our dealer, and I'll be very happy to collaborate with them and provide them a message of the technology innovation in ag and how our Chilean customers, one of them being myself.
Okay, well, on one of these, try to stop here through Campinas again.
Tom, I will certainly do that.
So we can get together and chat over coffee, right?
Yep, absolutely. and hopefully, if the time is right, join one of your future advisory board meetings in Campinas.
Well, next week we'll be having one of those meetings, and I'll make sure that we try to get that together and eventually have you come down and speak to the group.
Oh, I'd be delighted to do so, Tom.
That'd be fantastic, okay?
Tom, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Well, thank you for being part, and enjoy the rest of your weekend, okay?
Same to you, Tom.
Okay, and I also want to thank all of our listeners and invite you to come and visit our website, which is TalkToBrazil.com, where you'll find today's interview with Alex Foessel and a link to his LinkedIn profile. And again, his last name is Foessel. You can also find this and our previous shows of Talk to Brazil on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Himalaya, and many others. And thank you, our audience, and remind everyone that today's program was brought to us by Focus MI Market Intelligence, and Focus MI specializes in the market research for the Brazilian agricultural market. And more about them on their site, which is FOCUSMI.com. So remember, when you talk to Tom, you talk to Brazil and the world. Goodbye, and thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to Tom Reaoch on Talk to Brazil, the business connector to Brazil.